Hi everyone, and welcome to Pitango's Growth Academy. I'm Idit Muallem, a partner in Pitango's Growth Fund, and I would like to thank you all for joining us today, and of course a huge thank you to our amazing speakers who are so passionate about contributing to the startup ecosystem. The focus of today's session is around scaling your customer success team and operation, and we'll discuss a variety of aspects, including hiring profile, customer onboarding, how and when to show ROI, data and automation, PLG, compensation plans, and more. To those of you joining our academy for the first time, I'll just briefly share that it's a program we started a few years ago when we started seeing, even just in our own portfolio, more and more companies like AppsFlyer, Via, Taboola, Riskified, growing extremely fast, crossing the 50 million ARR, targeting the 100 million ARR milestone, and we felt that there's so much we can all learn from the experience and journey of these first and second wave of growth companies. Our sessions are aimed to cover the strategic pillars of growth, including sales, marketing, customer success, pricing, company culture, and more. Obviously, when COVID happened, each of these topics required its adjustments, and we have touched that as well. And now, back to 2022, hopefully the year in which COVID ends as a pandemic, and we're opening the year with this special edition focusing on customer success. As much as customer success is thriving now, and especially after COVID, when everyone understands that retention is the new growth, it will only continue to grow. We have managed to gather and bring on board an elite team of 8 customer success leaders from the top growth companies we are all learning from all the time. We're going to hear from each of them a detailed presentation, very hands-on and very open, so we can really drill down to each topic and come out of the session with many practical advices, benchmarks, best practices, etc. As you look at the agenda, I would like to point your attention not only to the topics, but to the mix of companies, and mainly to the different products. There's a difference if you're a value-based, ROI-driven offering like Yotpo, Gong, or PayEm, for example, versus a core infrastructure product like Riskified, and versus a workflow tool like Monday and AppsFlyer. These 3 categories of product define a lot of aspects of the customer success team's focus, KPIs, operations, and roles. We'll touch more on that throughout the session, but it's a nice exercise for you to try and figure out to which of these 3 categories you fit in most at the current stage of your company. So, with that in mind, I would like to kick off our session and invite the first speaker, Yael Haloutz, VP Customer Success at PayEm, a Pitango First portfolio company, to share with us her playbook on how to build and grow your customer success team from one generalist to a group of 10 and more. Yael is an enthusiastic and experienced customer success and account management leader in the SaaS B2B space, from early-stage startups through $2 billion plus valuations. As a customer success leader, Yael combines her passion for people, technology, and business. In her recent roles, Yael led the customer success groups at WalkME, Papaya Global, and is now leading the customer organization at PayEm. Yael holds a BSc in electrical engineering from Tel Aviv University and an MBA from Reichman University. Yael, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Idit. Hi, I'm Yael, VP Customer Success at PayEm. We are a round A startup operating in the fintech scene and are modernizing the way finance teams work these days. We do it by streamlining, simplifying, and most importantly, consolidating core financial processes into an all-in-one platform, PayEm. From requesting funds, creating and approving POs, performing the payment, and syncing it all to the ERP of your choice. Today, I'll be talking about scaling a customer success team from 2 to whatever size of a team you need. And rest assured, there is no magic here, just a lot of thinking, experience, and all of that I'd love to share with you. We have 125 small, medium businesses and enterprise customers. We usually sell to the second in command, which is CFO or VP Finance, Director of Finance in the org. We have a policy around POCs. We don't approve it all the time, but we definitely approve it when needed, when products are new or penetrating into new territories. We are a subscription-based company with a freemium offering. We have recently changed our commercial model, so recently operate in a hybrid model of 2. Our time to value varies based on the product you buy and spans from days to weeks, and we obviously try to keep it on the days side. We are a based and bonus-based CS organization, and the KPIs are often changing based on the company's OKRs. From an information system perspective, we use Salesforce, Looker, and Intercom. Our CS team is built off of enterprise CSMs and finance experts, and we make sure that the R&R is well-defined to avoid or delay burnout. We unfortunately don't have CS ops yet. We're an early-stage company, but definitely working on making sure we'll have one in the near future. And from revenue perspective, we own renewals and expansion pipeline, and we partner with our sales team throughout the customer journey. Let's start. Customer success. My belief is that customer success goes way beyond the department. Customer success is a fairly young profession. It's been around close to 20 years. Established in the US, a CRM company figured out that some of their customers are leveraging the product in a different way than they designed, and they thought it's really cool, and they brought back this knowledge into the org and established a team called Customer Success, that their entire job was to make sure that customers are successfully using the product. So this role may be, more commercial, more technical, more high touch, more low touch, but at the heart of it, CSMs are here to ensure that customers are able to achieve their desired outcomes using your product, our product, or technology, and on the other hand, advocate for the clients internally within the company they work for. We need to continuously win customers' trust, and we do it by setting expectations up front and over-delivering later. This is the customer trust equation. Nobody owns the customer, but someone always owns the moment. Said by the CRO of Walt Disney, and boy, they know how to create special moments. The set expectation plus over-deliver equation brings all the company's functions into the loop. Marketing and sales are responsible for the first half of the equation around setting expectation, and then CS comes, and services and product and R&D responsible for over-delivering. Each department owns a moment during the customer's life cycle. Early days CSMs. So as part of a core team of an early stage startup, you probably know the feeling that you just cannot keep doing everything. You need to sell, you need to expand, you onboard new clients, you technically support them, you need to renew at a certain point, you need to promote them within. So you hire someone to step in and help. You call them a CSM. They'd usually not have clear KPIs. Early days CSMs are kind of jack of all trades. They're semi-product managers, they do project management, they empathize with clients, they make sure that clients see value, they bring feedback back into the product, they do tech support. They need to build relationships, they need to renew accounts, they need to train customers on the product, they need to enable them, they need to collect credit points for the first time that, God forbid, they'll mess up. They're generalists, they're very smart and talented journalists. At PayEm, our first customer success managers took the company from 10 to 60 clients with little to no methodology or data. They did everything from support to consulting on corporate accounting and then selling. So the question is, does this model scale? And the answer is no. When building a team, you need to think about what framework you need to put in place today that could efficiently support the scale of the company and the customer success organization. Some of the things that we need to consider are time zone or physical proximity to the engineering and product teams. CSMs play a really significant role in compensating for product shortcomings in early stage companies. So the ability to connect with the product teams, keeping the feedback loops as short as possible, and taking calls together is really, really key. Sometimes when the target market is in different territory than the engineering teams, then you may consider hiring a local CSM that speaks the language of the clients and knows their culture, but is located in the same time zone as the technical teams. Next would be to shift the CST makeup from generalists to specialists that could inhibit dedicated roles within the separate teams and sub-departments. So does the generalists model scale? The answer is no. We said it doesn't scale. Many reasons to that, but one of them is that it's nearly impossible to build an organization recruiting people with so many special traits like those two first generalists. It just doesn't scale up. You cannot build an organization counting on hiring people like that. Now, how to determine the makeup of the team and the structure? There are a few questions that we need to be able to answer. What do our customers need in order to be successful? And what roles do we need that will allow us to quickly onboard clients while ensuring high level of product adoption and education for self-sufficiency? Build relationships so we can sell back to our install base, upselling and cross-selling. And also keep the post-sales organization within the 20 to 30% range from the total company workforce. And also, speak the language of the clients, be able to translate their business objectives into measurable results and ROI, and understand what are their desired outcomes. Once you understand what your target audience needs, what your business needs in order to be able to support the customer's need, you need to be able to think about the structure and the people. The unique experiences, by the way, that we have hired at PayEm allowed us to quickly position our CSMs as trusted advisor or even consultants, as we hired a mix of experienced customer success managers and finance professionals. Now let's talk about the structure. The Trinity. I know that I have 4 pillars, but I like the title, and also because you need to have only 3 at start, and you can consider adding the 4th later. As the business matures, and you can see that it's about to scale, you need to have the right infrastructure in place, an organizational setup that can replicate itself as the install base grows. Here, I'll reference what I did at PayEm, which is also what worked for us at WalkME and what we did at Papaya Global. I basically adopted a typical SaaS structure where the customer success department of those generalists underwent division into 3 distinct departments: CSMs, customer success managers, onboarding or implementation experts, or sometimes they're called professional services, and technical support agents. There are a few things to consider here as well. Number 1 is customer success. What do they do? Customer success managers are owning the process of uncovering desired outcomes and its interpretation to ROI through our technology. Ideally, you can create a blend of experts like finance experts and CSMs, or HR experts and experienced CSMs, to enjoy the full range of knowledge. Now that the product is more mature and stable, you can have your CSMs within your clients' time zones and have the same culture and same language so that they can better relate with each other. This is usually relevant for enterprise-grade softwares that are going global. Professional services. Professional services is a proactive technical team, usually responsible for the integration of the product in a way that will shorten the time to value and increase the product stickiness. They closely collaborate with product and R&D, and sometimes they may have the nature of project managers. Support. Support is a reactive technical support team, which is super busy, especially in early stage companies that a product is still maturing. Building this team strong from the get-go can allow us to have a smaller CS team that focuses on retention and growth in different capacities, obviously, depending on the company's needs. Last but not least is ops. Customer success operations is a fairly new role and may wear different hats. In low-touch to tech-touch companies, that may be the function who is responsible for executing the life cycle and may make the need for professional services redundant. Hence, when I talked about the Trinity but had 4 options here, you should not or don't necessarily need to have all 4 at once. Sometimes the makeup of customer success manager, tech support, and ops or professional services can give you the best structure for your organization. So this is the recommendation for an infrastructure of a customer success organization that can scale as the company grows. Thank you.
Thank you, Yael, for this valuable session. For the Q&A part, I have asked my friend Dan Terner, co-founder and COO of GrowthSpace, to join us, as he perfectly represents the target audience of Yael's presentation. Like many of the companies in our deal flow as a growth fund, GrowthSpace is an early growth B2B SaaS company. It has just crossed the 100 customers milestone and a few millions in ARR. And now is the time to start building the customer success team and processes from scratch. Dan, we would love to hear your questions to Yael.
Thank you, Idit, and thanks, Yael, for the enlightening presentation. One of the questions that came up for me as I was looking through your presentation is how do you think about allocation of headcount and skills across the various teams as the company evolves? You showed your wonderful trinity, and I'm wondering how we can think about building these teams separately a long time.
Yeah, so I think it really relates to the fact of moving from generalists to specialists, and not everything needs to happen at the same time, right? But at the end of the day, you cannot build a team counting on one person doing all the job. What I found to be very useful is separating out first the technical support from the other CS work. Technical support really takes an important capacity of the job at early stage startups. A lot of issues going on all the time. You need someone that can speak with developers, right, understand the issues and orchestrate all that capacity of work, and then leaving the CSM job with, quite a lot of things, but mainly around relationship building, understanding desired outcomes, and implementing a solution that will drive those results. As you understand how complex your product is, right, how long the implementation takes, you can start thinking about separating out the professional services or onboarding capacities from the CS work. And then you have this trinity, right, CSM, onboarding, and support.
Thanks. Sure. And how do you think about the handovers between the commercial teams and CS? It's always a pain point across any company I've worked for. How do you structure it?
Crucial. There are a couple of things here. So first of all, commission or compensation plans can support the behaviors we want to have. So this is something to think about it. But there is a process of handover of accounts. There is a very detailed handover procedure that we have. You can implement it in your CRM, or you can have, just a form that a sales rep need to fill in before they hand over an account to customer success. We demand that the account executives will be part of the kickoff call, make sure that expectations were set correctly, and help us to reset expectations if needed. And then they're responsible and accountable for a certain journey of the onboarding. So not till the end and the go live, but there are a couple of milestones that we make sure the account executive is taking part in so that the handover is smooth and we make sure that expectations were set correctly and that we can, take the account forward.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then as you mentioned journey, how do you think about the first year journey in that? How do you build your sort of lock-in moments as the customers come in?
I have to say that now we're an early stage company and I had the privilege of working really closely with the customer. So most of the journey that we have right now, it's a reflection of feedback that we got from clients. We try to make the onboarding experience exactly in the right time so they can see value from the product and not invest too much time before they see that. And then during the journey, we try to make sure that there are educational touch points that help us to make sure clients understand the full extent of the product and actually use it, right, and see the benefits. And one of the, most fundamental things to do is to ensure that you lock in executive touch-ins, especially when you sell to, higher-end companies. So this is something we set right off the gate. Hey, we want to meet you 3 times a year. This is what we're going to present. This is the feedback we want to get. And we schedule it up front. So, it's a combination of making sure customers are keeping recent with the product development. We recommend ways to use the product. And then we have the touch points in the journey to share that with decision makers to make sure they also see the value and understand it.
It sounds great. And then how do you think about the composition of traits that a typical customer success person would have? You mentioned there's a lot of things they need to do, sort of manage customer relationships, operate complexity. What are the top 3 things you look for in a new rep?
So I think that customer success is a combination of, being tech savvy, strong business acumen, and great relationship skills or relationship building skills. I have to say that here at PayEm and also before at Papaya, I found it to be very useful to create a mix of experienced customer success managers that bring the methodology and the skills, and also domain experts. So at Papaya, we brought lawyers and payroll experts. Here at PayEm, we bring people with solid experience as finance leaders, controllers, people that did SOX compliance for quite some time. And together with the CS knowledge and the domain expertise, we create a really good and comprehensive customer success onboarding plan so that I can bring, people next time to the job.
And then what's your advice for, early stage or early growth leaders of customer success teams as they structure it? What's the one thing that they need to look out for and never let go? Or
The things that you do at the beginning are really impactful of the future, and making changes along the way, which is absolutely okay. And if we make mistakes, we need to fix and fix fast. But think about the future when you first set the foundation of the CS org. Making those changes later, significantly harder.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It
Appreciate
was a
it.
pleasure.
Thank you, Dan and Yael, for this great discussion. Moving on to our next session, we will get to learn a bit about what is customer success at Yotpo. When I first met Yotpo in 2017, I was overwhelmed by the amount of data they track on their customers and the complexity they need to handle, serving several tiers of customers with multiple products in a value-based type of offering, meaning you constantly need to stay close to the customer and basically justify your existence with measurable ROI. Today, Yotpo is valued at $1.4 billion and serving more than 30,000 customers. I'm excited to invite Asaf, Frige, Senior VP of Revenue at Yotpo, to share with us how to manage it all while still optimizing the customer success cost to the ARR. Asaf is an experienced go-to-market operator who leads the revenue organization at Yotpo and oversees the sales, client success, account management, and partners teams at Yotpo globally. Prior to Yotpo, Asaf was the VP of Revenue Operations and Delivery at Signals Analytics and an intelligence officer in the Israeli Intelligence Corps. Asaf holds an MBA and bachelor's degree in accounting and economics from Bar Ilan University, magna cum laude. Over to you, Asaf.
So thank you for having me today. Super excited to share some of our experience here at Yotpo. Try to build it in a super practical manner. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. So a few words about Yotpo before we start. So Yotpo is an e-commerce marketing platform. We offer integrated solution for SMS marketing, loyalty and referrals programs, rating reviews, and visual UGC. Operating globally today, we have 6 offices, over 800 employees, raised more than $400 million to date. A few words about our go-to-market approach in general. So at Yotpo, our strategy is based on 3 main dimensions. First of all, Yotpo is a multi-customer segment. That means that we sell and service VSB, SMB, mid-market, and enterprise customers. The second bucket is multi-geo, which means that we are operating globally, again, selling and servicing via the local go-to-market teams, and that's the key here. And the last point is that Yotpo is also a multi-product company. We are selling multiple or different type of products, mostly to the same buyer persona. This is what guides the way we are structuring the go-to-market teams at Yotpo. But today specifically, I'm going to put more focus on the way we approach the customer segmentation, as I believe it's more relevant to most of the companies. So how to scale up the CS org? I think that's the biggest question. In the next few slides, I'm going to walk you through the way our CS organization at Yotpo evolved over time, and more specifically, how we build a sustainable CS organization with great economics and great CRC, customer retention cost. So before we speak about the playbook, just to share a little bit about the way our CS org looked like back when I joined Yotpo about 5 years ago. I think it's a great way to describe the typical CS organization at the early stage. I think the first thing was that our CSMs were leveraged as kind of like a one-stop shop resource, which means that the CSMs at Yotpo, and I think in most companies at the early stage, owns the entire customer journey from onboarding to optimizing the customer, renewing customers, building the relationship, and so on and so forth. There are many companies that at early stage are already having retention teams or sales teams that own the retention conversations or the upsells and cross-sells activities. But in our case, it was different from the get-go. Another thing that I think characterizes CSM organizations at early stage is that normally CSMs have a very diversified book of business. It means it's like the same CSM is managing both 5K customers and 40K customers. That comes with many challenges we'll speak about in the next few slides. The approach, generally speaking, is relatively reactive in the sense that the CSM's time is mostly consumed for addressing issues and questions coming from the different customers. And it's less about being super methodical in applying a more proactive approach that can drive more success with the customers. And the last point is that the customer journey sometimes doesn't exist at this stage. Sometimes it does exist, but it's very not optimized for obvious reasons. I think that like with that operational environment, there are two main challenges. The first one is that there is misalignment between the CS investment and the CS cost spend to the potential of the customers or the size of the customers. If you think about it, if I'm a CSM and I'm managing like different type of customers at different sizes, it's more than likely that I will find myself dealing mostly with the lower end customers, the smaller ones that are typically having less resources, require much more hands-on approach, more price sensitive, and hence in a very weird way, I'm spending most of the time dealing with these customers rather than working with the larger customers that are supposed to have much larger opportunity for the long term. It also means that it's very difficult, almost impossible to transition the customer success function from being very reactive to be proactive, because again, most of the time is spent on addressing very demanding smaller customers that are coming to you over and over again, expecting you to do everything for them. In order to solve those issues or those challenges, we took like a very gradual approach to transition the CS organization from the way it used to be to the way we're operating today. And I'm going to use the next few slides to walk you through the key changes that we made. Needless to say, there were other changes that we did, but the ones that I'm going to cover are supposed to capture most of the things that I believe any CS organization needs to take into account to the very least. So starting with the first step, we introduced a tiering model. That basically means that we divided our customer base into several customer segments. Based on the customer profile, normally you are doing it based on AOV or potential growth of the customer. The easiest way to do it is, again, based on the size of the customer. But the key here is to make sure that you are grouping similar customers under the same bucket. Once you are segmenting the customers, the next step is basically to define a different customer journey for each one of these customer segments. When I'm saying customer journey, I'm referring to number of proactive touch points and type of touch points that we expect the CSM to have with each one of the customers. Just like to illustrate that, that's like a typical customer journey for an SMB customer at Yotpo. You can see that we are dividing our customer journey into three main phases. We have the onboarding phase, the optimization phase, and the renewal phase. If we take a look at the optimization phase in particular, you can see that like CSMs are expected to deliver 2 optimization calls, 2 QBRs, and obviously for mid-market customers, the number of proactive touch points will be higher. For VSP customers, it will be the opposite. It could be in-person meetings. In some cases, it could be via email and so on and so forth. So now we have customer segmentation, and we also defined a clear customer journey for each one of the segments. The next step is to align the CSM teams to the customer segments that we just built. And it's very important because if we just having the customer segment and the customer journey, but we're still operating in a way where each one of the CSMs is managing both small customers and large customers, the problem of paying too much attention to the smaller customers repeat itself, and the CSMs won't be able to execute the theoretical playbook in which is supposed to expect to spend much more time with the larger customers. Hence, the solution is to make sure that we are assigning CSMs to specific customer segment. So for example, we will have CSMs that are managing only SMB customers. We will have CSMs that are managing only mid-market customers. And that's basically the key. In order for us to do that, there are 2 forces that we need to take into account that can potentially contradict each other. The first one is the total ACV managed by each one of the CSMs. I think that's like one of the more frequent questions that I'm being asked over and over again is like how much in ACV each one of the CSMs is supposed to manage. And I think the answer here is like very different for different type of companies that are operating in different environment with different customer segments and also related to the stage of the company. But I would say like the number here is acceptable, depends on where you are as a company. It could be $1 million, it could be $2 million, it could be $3 million. But another consideration to take into account, as I said before, is the number of accounts that we expect the CSMs to manage. There should be like a reasonable number of accounts that CSM is managing, or else it won't be possible for the CSM to execute the playbook that we expect the CSM to execute. Let's take like a numeric example. Let's say that we want each one of the CSMs to manage $2 million in total ACV. We want the CSMs to be very proactive with their customers and speak with them on a monthly basis. And we also know that the AOV per customer is 5K. In that case, we basically expect the CSM to manage 400 accounts and be very proactive with these customers throughout the customer journey. I think it's obviously like it's impossible to manage 400 accounts on a monthly basis with this AOV. So the key here is to find the right balance between the total ACV managed and number of accounts. And oftentimes the right way to do that is to segment the customers in a way that will make sense from a unit economic standpoint, at least at the first stage. Another consideration that should be taken here is the profile of the CSM. I think there is like a different philosophy for that, but I would argue that different type of customers require different type of CSMs. Going back to this example, if the CSM is managing 400 accounts, I think the key skill set that we will expect to see from the CSM are very different than what we'll expect to see from a CSM that is managing only 20 accounts. In the first case, we will have to see more a project management type of a skill set, great prioritization skill set, whereas I would argue that like for the larger customers, you need a much more commercially oriented person to manage much more complex relationship with multiple stakeholders. So we have a customer segmentation. We have a predefined customer journey for different customer segments. We aligned the CSM teams with the customer segments. And the next question to be asked is how we are making sure that this theoretical playbook is actually executed. We'll take like an example. I'm an SMB CSM. I'm managing 100 accounts. And I'm expected to deliver monthly touch points for these accounts. How I know when I'm starting my day, if I need to speak today with customer number 26, number 27, number 73, whether it needs to be an optimization call or renewal call and so on and so forth. One way to do it that probably won't work is to work with like Excel sheets. A better way to do it is to implement a CSM platform. We are at Yotpo using Gainsight. There are other vendors out there with pros and cons. But the key here is that this platform structures the customer journey for the CSMs. So each CSM knows every day what specific call to actions need to be taken with each one of the customers that are part of this portfolio. By doing that, we can actually execute this predefined customer journey that we just defined. We can also enable a much more proactive approach because by having this platform, we can also start collecting some interesting signals that will enable us to add another layer of proactivity coming from the CSMs. And I'm going to elaborate on that in the next few slides. And I'm going to elaborate on that in the next few slides. The next thing that happens once you have like a system in place is that you can ensure consistency among the CSMs. We want to make sure that similar customers are getting the same experience, same level of services, and it can't happen if you don't have that platform in place. And last but not least, and I'm putting my operator hat for a second, I think it's very important to use these platforms because it gives us great visibility into what happens between the CSMs and the customers. We can measure the type of activities and the number of activities that each one of the CSMs are having with their customers. We can see how many call to action are open per CSM. We can make different type of comparisons between the CSMs and have like really great visibility into what's going on with the customers, and over time optimize the customer journey by collecting these different type of signals. So we have CSMs that are assigned now to customer journey. We have system in place that can help us execute our playbook. The next step is to start adding some interesting automations, leveraging the system that we have. A nice example of that could be a post-onboarding survey that we are using at Yotpo. Once the customer is deployed, it automatically triggers a survey for the customer in which we are asking to get feedback on the way we set expectations, the level of service, product gaps, and so on and so forth. By doing that, we are able to identify issues with customers at early stage that we can fix to make sure the customers will be back on track. We can also identify super satisfied customers that would be potentially cross-sold later on in the customer journey, since we know there is a very high correlation between level of satisfaction in the onboarding stage and the ability to grow the customers and of course to retain them. Another example would be NPS. We are triggering NPS every 6 months for each one of our customers based on where they are in their journey. And that gives us another visibility into the sentiment of the customers. NPS is another great operational tool, by the way. We are collecting the NPS. We can trigger via the platform call to action to the CSM to reach out the customer and follow up based on the feedback that we received. Could be about the service, product, and so on and so forth. It also gives great visibility into leadership, so we know exactly what is more common when it comes to customers and their lack of satisfaction. Another thing that we can do by leveraging like automations is to start building like some triggers that are based on customer behaviors. I'll give you like a few examples. If we see, for example, that like the customer is not engaging with our platform after X days, that could trigger automatically a call to action to the CSM to reach out. If we see that there was an increase in the number of orders that customer is collecting, that can indicate that the customer is growing. That will create or will trigger call to action to the CSM to reach out the customer and see if there is an opportunity to grow the customer. There are many types of like risk and opportunities. Everything is predefined based on the interesting behaviors that we mapped at Yotpo. Just like to summarize where we are in the journey, we segmented our customers. We have CSM that are working with specific customer segments. We have system in place. We have automations in place. So I think we can argue at this stage that we have a very nice machine of CSMs. What is important to do at this stage is to start challenging yourself with regards to the initial assumptions that we made when we build when we built the customer journey. If, for example, we made an assumption that an SMB customer will require monthly touch point, maybe it's not the case. After a while, you can start seeing what type of activities are moving the needle, what type of activities are less required, how it varies from one customer segment to another, and so on and so forth. So that's like an opportunity to start reducing the number of proactive touch points, sometimes increasing the number of proactive touch points for specific customer segment. It's also a great time to start asking yourself whether the type of proactive touch points make sense. Do you really need an in-person meeting with an SMB customer, as an example? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, and so on and so forth. At each stage, I think it also makes sense to start entertaining the concept of building expertise within the customer journey and transitioning from the world where CSM is doing everything to a world where we start building different experts for different stages in the customer journey. I will argue that the CSM is not set up for success. If we expect the CSM to be a great onboarding person, that sometimes comes with requirements to be very technically oriented, a very strong like a project manager, versus building relationship, versus renewing customers, versus upselling and cross-selling customers. And that's like the time where it makes sense to start changing that very kind of like a one-stop shop approach. Just by doing this fine-tuning, we're already starting to touch cost optimization of the organization. But if you think about it, we can take a much more methodical approach into optimizing the CS costs, leveraging different type of levers that we might have. And just like named a few here, but there are many more. So I'll just give you like a few examples, starting with like thinking or differentiating first-year customers versus second-plus-year customers. Let's take a look here. This is again an SMB customer journey in the first year. Again, as I said before, we have the onboarding phase, we have the optimization phase, and the renewal phase. And again, you can see that in the optimization phase, we have 4 proactive touch points that CSMs is doing, 2 optimization calls and 2 QBRs. When we're moving on to the second year, you don't really need 2 QBRs and 2 optimization calls. We are left with only 1 optimization call. However, to remind you, we also have the system in place, so we are able to identify specific customer behaviors that can trigger a call to action to the CSM whenever it is needed. So I wouldn't say that we are connecting with customers only once a year. I will say it like that's like the proactive playbook that we are applying, but we are using a lot of like sophisticated automations to make sure that the right customers are getting the right attention, knowing that it won't be sustainable to apply the same customer journey over and over again, no matter how advanced the customer is in terms of his journey with us over time. Another level that we have is local CSMs. I think most of the companies, their playbook is to have CSMs that are aligned with the time zone of the customers that are servicing. So for example, it makes sense to have CSMs that are based in US to manage US customers. I think it's right. However, I will argue that like over time, you need to ask yourself if it's still true. Knowing that some of the customers, and of course it depends on the type of product and type of customer segments, but we know at Yotpo, for example, that like there are certain type of customers that in the second year, in the third year, they don't really require a lot of CSM attention. They are in kind of like autopilot mode, fully deployed. Our CSMs are chasing them and they don't want to speak with us. So that's a great opportunity to start considering transitioning these customers to lower cost geo. What we're doing at Yotpo, we are managing many of our EST customers via Israel, mostly customers that have been with us for at least 2 years, for example, very satisfied, and we're taking like the most sophisticated approach that I mentioned before. Another interesting concept that we are leveraging at Yotpo is what we call super CSM. We took our long tail customers that have been with us for a few good years, super satisfied, paying relatively like much less when it comes to AOV, and we transitioned them to one CSM that is working in a very surgical manner based on different type of triggers that we are creating. He's managing now today 500 accounts. These accounts were managed in the past by 5 different CSMs, each one managed 100 accounts, and retention numbers actually went up since we implemented that change, and costs became much lower, of course. Another thing that I want to elaborate now is to start considering like a lower cost resources in general. CS cost is comprised of also like a support, professional services, deployment costs. We at some point started outsourcing some of the tasks that don't really require a high level of expertise to the Philippines, for example. So technical support, some of the professional services aspects, and so on and so forth. And last but not least, we have like a customer marketing, which is a very powerful tool that can replace some of the interactions that CSMs are having with the customers, pushing for more education, optimizing features, leveraging other features that are not leveraging, pushing for cross-sales opportunities, and so on and so forth. I think many organizations are putting a lot of focus on predicting sales, whereas predicting churn is as important, if not more important, over time. What we did, we basically are taking a hybrid approach. We have data model that is based on different parameters that we found very highly correlated with retention numbers of customers. And we're running this regression to predict how churn is going to look like. So in fact, we can predict the churn for the next year in a world where we don't see any product changes or operational changes. On top of that, and this is the complementary side, we have a bottom-up CSM prediction approach in which each one of the CSMs is required to predict whether customers are going to renew or not. And they need to put also like an ACV prediction for each one of the customers, factoring in potential downsell or upsell. By cross-referencing these two models, we can see we can get great prediction and to understand how the numbers are going to look like in the next few quarters. That's a great methodology to provide the leadership with some interesting tools that can help them manage the operations in a much better manner. For example, if I know that we have certain customers that are predicted as no by the CSMs, that's the time to start building like an attack plan to fix that and making sure that as many of them are converted into yes. We're also getting like a commitment for the CSM leadership. I'm getting from the VP of CSM at Yotpo, L commits for retention numbers. She's getting commits from her leaders and so on and so forth. You can see how we are breaking down the different customer segments. You can see it by number of employees, but we're also looking at the revenue of the customer. Generally speaking, in VSB, we don't have CS resources with the exception of technical support. In SMB, you can see that we have yearly packages. You can see the AOV. The CSM book of business varies, could be 1 to 75 accounts, could be 1 to 350. I guess, again, based on the things that I mentioned before, we have an onboarding manager for the onboarding phase. CSMs are owning the optimization and the upsells. Account management are doing the cross-sells, and CSM is the one renewing. Obviously, with larger customers with higher level of complexity, we are breaking down the different experts further. So you can see it like onboarding. We have solution engineers, a more technical resource in comparison to the onboarding manager. CSMs are still owning the optimization, but account managers are also involved in upsells activities and of course owning the cross-sell activities. And renewal is also done oftentimes by the account manager, again, given the more commercial nature of the relationship. Enterprise, exactly the same, but even with higher level of involvement coming from the account manager, again, given the level of complexity, the commercial complexity with these customers. So just to summarize the transition from subscale to scalable organization, we started with like a CSM that supported the entire customer journey, what we defined as one-stop shop. Book of business was very diversified. CSMs found themselves managing very small customers and very large customers, and the service model was very reactive. Today, we have different resources that are assigned to different stages within the customer journey. We are taking like a tiering model with segmentation and different customer journey for each one of these segments. The service is very proactive when it is needed, of course. We have a CSM platform, automations, predictions, and we also have a different type of KPIs. Didn't cover it today. That's probably for a different topic. The way we are structuring the CS comp is as follows. 80% is base and 20% is variable, that is based on performance. However, when we're saying variable, we are looking at the entire performance of a certain tier. So we have like a ladder for the SMB, a different ladder for mid-market with different net retention and logo retention numbers. You can see here that like generally speaking, 40% is given for logo retention, 40% for net retention. We are changing the weights, by the way, based on the size of the customer. So larger customers will put more focus on the net retention number, given the fact that we know that like it makes more sense. So it's more than possible to grow these customers as opposed to very small customers that are very price sensitive and are less likely to use more of our products. And we have another component, which is a personal component, and that's basically like the number of cross-sells that CSMs are pushing. They also have like, it's based on ladder. And for that one in particular, we are compensating CSMs based on their personal performance. But that's the entire 100% of the comp. Can speak a little bit about the different considerations, why we're looking at the entire customer segment and not just like a personal, but very high level. I think as opposed to say, it's very important to make sure like CSMs are very collaborative with each other to leverage knowledge. And it's also like a different nature of people oftentimes. When we introduced this structure, it wasn't that easy to implement. Some of the CSMs were very much against that. I think there are other organizations in general that are taking like a different approach where they are disconnecting the CSMs for renewal conversations from upsell responsibilities and so on and so forth. We found that model much more, much stronger in the sense that it made the CSMs much more accountable for the results of the accounts. And we started seeing like many more upsells and cross-sell activities, and also retention numbers obviously went up, logo retention included. Onboarding manager, that is again the resource that is responsible for deploying the customers. We're measuring different aspects. The first one is time to deploy, which is a key, of course, and more importantly, the level of customer satisfaction that is coming post-deployment that we are collecting via the service that I mentioned before. Account managers at Yotpo are operating just like sales, 50-50 base variable. They have revenue target that they need to go after. The only difference between them and account executives is they are targeting our existing customer base. And that's like the main difference there. Just like to clarify, at Yotpo, because we are selling multiple products, our philosophy is that we need dedicated resource for cross-selling with additional products, because those on the one hand are based on level of satisfaction that customers have based on the initial product that they used. But you need like a very dedicated state of mind to approach these customers and growing them. Upsells, on the other hand, in other words, growing customers from one package to another in the same product line is very natural for CSMs to own, because they know exactly where the customer is, what is the sentiment within the specific product, and what are the specific needs that are being collected as part of the customer journey that we are taking.
Thank you, Asaf. What an amazing scale and command and control machine you have built. I'm excited to move on to our next session with Eran Aloni, Chief Customer Officer at Gong.io, for an open Q&A session around scaling customer success in fast-growing companies. Eran was there from the very beginning in 2016, and I can't wait to hear from him what is customer success at Gong.io, a company valued today at more than $7 billion. Eran is passionate about great products that matter, a team builder, business and product leader. He's previously held positions as COO and VP Products at Adobe EchoSign, VP Products at Influitive, and VP Product Marketing at Clarizen. Eran holds a BSc in Mathematics and Computer Science from Tel Aviv University. Hi, Eran. It's so great to have you with us today, and thank you for your time. Before we dive deeper into the different topics, it would be great if you can give us a quick overview so we understand the scale, the type of customers and tiers that you're facing, and the high-level customer success team that you're handling.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. My team has all functions related to handling our customers post the initial sale, meaning customer success, professional services, support, training, education, community, all of those functions. And we're serving thousands of customers and growing very rapidly year over year. We segment our business into 4 tiers, from smaller customers to very large enterprises. So we have commercial, mid-market, enterprise, and strategic accounts. And each one of those tiers has a slightly different customer lifecycle, different stakeholders, and different milestones throughout the customer journey.
Thank you. Just by the way, out of curiosity, why don't you have a self-serve tier that you can just insert your credit card and start working with Gong?
It's something that we keep looking at. As a company that started a completely new category, a lot of what we're doing is actually educating our customers into going deeper and understanding what are the big transformational challenges we can help them serve. As the category matures, this is definitely something that we'll be looking at, and we're investing a lot in making big parts of the customer journey self-service, but we feel that we would better serve our customers today with more of a human touch and a little bit more of just validating that we're a good fit for them and we can really make them successful.
Great, thank you. So you've mentioned the different tiers. You started from a lower tier and went up market, up to 4 tiers today, and the customer success obviously matures accordingly. Can you share some milestones to when and what to add in terms of KPIs and specialties?
Yeah, I think our journey is probably very similar to other companies that are growing. Just happened very quickly for us as the company grew very quickly. Like many teams at the beginning, we had a single customer success team that handled the entire customer lifecycle. They handled all customers of all sizes, and basically, we were looking at basic metrics like NDR, basically measuring the growth in those accounts, logo churn, and we actually track and still track very heavily NPS as a way to really gauge the level of excitement within our customer base. Over time, that evolved, right? As our customer base grew and we saw the differentiation of what smaller customers need and what larger customers need, we started segmenting the team into different tiers. And over time, we added specialized roles when we felt that, when the team grows, it's very hard to find people who are amazing at everything that customers need. And as customer expectations evolve and the product becomes more mature, you want to make sure that you're giving customers the best possible experience. So specialization around training or education or implementation of those customers, or technical account management that adds that layer of technical integration to those customers. These are all capabilities that our CS team has, but the level of depth and the level of training and onboarding that they get in order to really focus on that piece of the journey is something that is impossible to maintain at scale. So you have to start segmenting the team. in terms of KPIs, those evolve all the time as well. As we have more data about our customers, and we know more what are the leading indicators to success. I think we, as many customer success organizations, really focus on NDR, meaning the growth in the book of business or in a cohort of customers year over year. But this is a lagging indicator, right? If you see that you're not where you want to be, it's a little bit too late to make changes, or changes would have a lag until you see the impact.
Exactly. I want to understand how you can be proactive without frequently calling to the customers and talking, but still understanding the potential of the customers, you want to invest more in. So what are you using?
So one thing that we did very early on, we invested a lot in building data infrastructure, meaning that we know exactly for every customer how many users they have, how often do they use the product, which parts of the product are they using, how frequently do they use it, etc. And in the same way, we also have a lot of data around our own process, meaning when was the last time that we talked to this customer? Obviously, we use Gong to get a lot of that data, not just when we talk to them, but who did we talk to, what did we talk to them about. And today we use a lot of this data as leading indicators. So we're looking at 4 main KPIs today. There's a lot more behind the scenes, but really, if you think about the core KPIs for the team, one is NDR, one is license utilization. We want to make sure that customers who bought a certain amount of license are actually using all or almost all of those licenses. The third is a level of consistent usage of the platform, something that we call stickiness, meaning how many users are using the platform on a regular basis. And the fourth piece is really still manager assessment of the work that CSMs are doing. We use a lot of data, but there is certain elements that are very hard to track with data alone. So these are the 4 main ones that we're using across the board.
So that relates really, if you can share with these KPIs how you build the compensation plans that obviously also evolves within time as the company scales. And also, if there's something that you're doing ongoing and not just at the end of the year that can help motivate the team throughout the year?
Yeah, so first of all, we measure those KPIs consistently. It's not just something that we measure at one point in time. We also, by the way, a lot of our own internal process is measured too. So for example, conducting QBRs, at least up market, we know that those QBRs, if we have the right people and we conduct them at the right points in time, add a ton of value and are very indicative of the level of relationship and stickiness that we have within the account. So we measure that as well. So the way that we do that, we measure those KPIs and many others on a consistent basis, and CSMs get triggered if an account is not in a good place or some health scores decline. So this is like, they get like a call to action that they can respond to it immediately. From a compensation perspective, our CSMs are, they have around 80% of the base and 20% of variable. Our bonus plans are annual, but we do have quarterly metrics that we track. And at the end of the year, we look at that entire performance, and based on that and company performance, we determine the bonus structure for the CSMs.
Great, thank you. But you've mentioned one KPI, the significant QBRs, that I'm a bit curious about it. Yes, it's crucial, but how do you give the tools to the team to be engaged in these significant QBRs? How do you measure it? How do you give them the tools to show ROI? Even when I think of Gong, I think of usage-based. So how do you translate it also to ROI and when to show it to the customers?
Yeah, so usage for us is just table stakes, right? It's just something that you need to have. Obviously, if no one uses the platform, then we have a problem. But the higher level ROI is very different. The discussions we have with our executive sponsors are around their core metrics. So if you're a VP of sales and you're hiring a lot of people this year, we want to show you that we can help you reduce people's onboarding time or get them to close more deals in the first couple of quarters since they joined. if you're launching a new product, we would like to show you that we can help you track whether your team is actually selling that product and are they using the right messaging and what types of objections you're getting back from the market. So this is the type of interaction that our CSMs have with our executive sponsors. And the QBR is really the opportunity for us to work with them, understand what are their strategic priorities, and show them the data that we've collected or we collected together with their team, and show them the progress that we've made together. And a lot of time, the way to engage with those customers, everyone is busy, is to send a little bit of a taste of what we will cover in the QBR to pique their interest. So if it's just something that, a busy sales executive were asking for an hour of their time just to show them how much people are using the platform, they're probably not going to attend, because they can watch that in a report or get a PDF and be done with that. But in order to get that higher level discussion that really is strategic to them, we have to elevate the ROI discussion to align with their strategic priorities.
And what are you doing with the lower tiers where you need to create this engagement but can't have these QBRs?
So either we just do it at a lesser frequency. So we may not have a quarterly business review, we may have 1 or 2 a year, or that the level of detail, obviously if you have a small team, as some of our smallest customers, you may have, a single sales team or 2 sales teams. The level of engagement is a little bit different. So the types of ROI and the level of engagement is adjusted to the level of the customer. A lot of times smaller customers also don't have, they don't need and they don't have the desire to talk to us every quarter at the same level of detail. So we adjust our customer lifecycle to their needs. And then a lot of times we just send them, information about their accounts in some automated way. And then if they have any questions or they want to go deeper, then we schedule a separate review. And this is something that we constantly change. Again, it's always good if a customer wants more of our time, it's actually a really good indication. So we usually don't tell customers that, we never tell customers we don't have time for this. But we try to pique their interest and make sure that they engage with us.
Thank you. So the title of the session is around fast scale, and one of the issues I was very curious about is how you've managed the hiring process and onboarding throughout this growth.
Yeah. So there are several aspects to this. One is being really clear on what is the profile of people that you'd like to hire. And as I mentioned earlier, that had changed significantly over time. If at the beginning we were looking for people who can do everything and really thrive on being kind of jacks of all trades, where people that love doing training and onboarding and troubleshooting and providing product feedback, and they really thrive in that level of environment. Over time, we kind of dialed the profile to be more and more specific. So if you have a strategic CSM, you're looking for a different profile than a commercial CSM. And a lot of our CSMs in commercial, for example, have been transferred from other functions in the company, which is a great source of candidates that already know the product, they know the customer, they're used to talking to customers, especially SDRs that are looking for a way to evolve their career, but don't necessarily want to go into a sales career. So we've had great success there. And as a company also, we invest a lot in coaching people to their next role. So we actually have a lot of people that started in commercial CSMs and moved to mid-market and enterprise, et cetera, as they build their careers or have moved into leadership. So
do you give them the career path immediately when they join? Are they asking for it?
We don't commit to a career path for people who just join, because we need to see and they need to see. A lot of times these are early career people. They don't necessarily know where they want to be in 2 or 3 years. They know that they want to advance, but they don't always know where. What we do is communicate to them, and we actually show that, right? And they see that all around them, that people move between roles, and people get promoted, or people that are curious about a role that is different from what they're doing today. We give them an opportunity to explore that and engage with another team and see if that's a good fit for them. So it's something that it's not enough just to tell people. You have to show them that this is what we're doing. We have around 20% of our team every year either gets promoted or moving to another role, right? So people see that all around them. What we do require people is a commitment that whatever role they're in now, they'll do it for the next, let's say, 18 months or so before really transitioning to another role. And we do want to see that people are successful in the role as they look into their next position. Another thing that is crucial to our success and our ability to hire a very large number of people and make them successful and have almost no attrition in the team is that we invested very early on in a very strong enablement process. And to this day, our enablement team is just incredible and is doing a great job. That allows us both to create a solid foundation for everyone who joins the company to have a common set of skills or knowledge that is shared across the board, and then have very specific CS, support, services, paths. So people are really put on this path and have a lot of learning available to them, certifications. We have buddies that help them in their growth beyond the first few weeks.
Are you using any tools for this onboarding and learning processes and on the ongoing?
We have a learning management solution that we're using internally. We have a knowledge base that is very well maintained. Again, we took an approach that it's not, for example, for the knowledge base, it's not just a wiki that anyone could add any type of content. So there's some curation process and some quality process to make sure that the content is up to date, that it's written in a consistent way, that it's written in a clear way. It's very easy to search for it and find it. So there's a very big investment in that aspect. I talked to a lot of people joining my team and other people, and the number one thing that they're saying is that the onboarding experience that they get is just better than everything that they've seen before. And that's a huge part of our ability to get people to be successful is that level of investment. And I have to say, I'm seeing quite a lot of early stage companies that are planning for growth, and the investment in enablement and operation is sometimes lagging. And I think people tend to think that this is maybe luxury to be able to invest in that. But I actually think it's a strategic investment that allows you to scale, and it's very difficult to be successful without it.
Great, thank you. You've mentioned operations, and there's one issue that everyone say we were investing too little, too late, and that's like automation and the CS ops. Can you share when did you start? If you had to do it again, when would you start? What are you doing on that part?
We started. We had investments in operations even before we had a dedicated team. But really building a team, I think we started the team almost 3 years ago. So probably when we had around 20 CSMs or 20 team members, or even less than that at the time. The role of this team is not just operating what we have today. It's a big part, but it's not the main part. It's actually building for what we think or what we expect to need in a year. And if you don't lay that foundation, then it's almost impossible to be able to scale. So investment in tools like we use Gainsight, but other systems could work as well. Deep integration of data into those systems, creating those automations, creating those metrics that help us measure the health of our customers and the success of our team. All of these are key in order for us to build a team that can respond quickly. And Gong is all about reality, right? We provide customers with the reality of their business, and it's a big part of who we are. If we don't know what's going on, you can't really react to it. You can't really plan ahead. And this is really the strategic goal behind this team. So I think we probably made that investment at the right time. I always think we could have made it earlier, but generally speaking, I think it was well timed from that perspective.
Is there anything that you took from investing in automation in the lower tiers that is now valuable also for the mid tiers and you would recommend for other companies to do, even if serving higher ASPs?
Yeah, definitely. For us, and this may be different for different companies, what we're seeing constantly is that everything that we start at the lower or for smaller customers, very quickly you realize that the market is maturing, and the same process can be very helpful for larger and larger customers. Customers usually don't wake up in the morning and they want to talk to someone from one of their vendors. They want to get their work done. They want to make sure that they're well updated, that they know what they should be doing. So if we can build for them a solution that they can self-serve, a lot of times this is the best experience for them. It's really, we don't really think about it only as a cost investment or a cost reduction investment. It really does provide a better customer experience. For us specifically, our largest customers have thousands and thousands of users. So we can't really be successful managing such large accounts if those accounts don't have a self-service way to use the platform, because we cannot talk to thousands of people. We cannot talk to hundreds of managers or dozens of directors within those customers. So in order to make them successful, we have to provide them those tools. And this goes from, a help center or an academy where people can take courses, or creating bundles of education that we can give them so they can educate their own team, right? So a lot of it is enabling the customer to be self-sufficient. Different tiers of customers may use this information in different way. But we're definitely seeing that investment pay off across the board.
Thank you. Another issue is the alignment that customer success has with the sales team and with the marketing team. Can you elaborate a bit on those commercial touch points with sales and with marketing?
Yeah. So maybe a word or two about kind of the journey and how we got to where we are today. Early days, customer success owned the entire commercial process with existing customers, meaning all of the renewals, the upsells, etc. At some point, we felt that, especially for the larger accounts, those upsells or commercial negotiations at renewal requires a deeper sales skill than customer success is tasked with, or that can we don't have that DNA, so to speak, and it's really hard to have a CSM that's great in providing value to customers, but it's also like a great salesperson. So what we have today and have had for 3 years or so, we have a customer account executive team. So that works in parallel and in conjunction with the CS team in our higher tiers. And our smaller customers, still our customer success team is handling commercials as well. Those teams work very closely together, and we actually try to make sure that we have small pods of 2 or 3 CSMs working with 2 or 3 account executives on the same book of business. So they're very much aligned. They have a very clear understanding of roles and responsibilities, and they work together in QBRs. And if there's risk in account or there's a big opportunity within those accounts, they strategize together and divide the work between them to make sure that we're driving the right results. And we've seen that to be a very successful model. It does require a lot of work, because once you have multiple people working with the account, clear definitions of roles and responsibilities and who owns different milestones throughout the customer life cycles are key. And this is something that we probably update and tweak every 6 to 12 months, just to make sure that we address what we're seeing in the market and make sure that we have the best process to provide the best results for our customers and for the business.
Thank you. And also the same question, but for the marketing aspect.
Yeah, I mean, we're working very closely with marketing in a variety of different ways. One, our customers are what we call raving fans. So they provide a huge amount of content, case studies, references, referrals that our marketing team is engaged with, right? So create.
Are you applying customer marketing?
Excuse me?
Are you applying customer marketing?
Yeah, we have a customer
different
marketing
tiers?
team. Yeah, we have a customer marketing team that is working in conjunction with the CS team. And you may focus one quarter on a specific type of message or a specific type of case study that you want to work with the team on. So the team works together on those things. And again, as the product matures and we have launched new products, the customer marketing is working closely with the CS team and the sales team to educate existing customers with those new products, and in some ways build the same funnel that we have for new business, but for customers who may want to expand or use Gong for additional use cases or additional teams within their business. So we have a very close relationship with them, as well as, we have initiatives like a community that we've launched this year. And obviously this is something that the marketing team is very well involved in, to create that level of engagement with customers, get their feedback. The product team is very involved in those activities as well. So we're working very well cross-functionally.
Eran, when we were preparing for this session, you've talked about the customer-focused company culture that you have it in Gong and how it's not just the responsibility of the customer success team. Can you share a little bit about that? It's something that is so important for a lot of companies. A lot of CEOs are talking about it, but it's much harder to actually implement that.
I think this is a tricky one, and it's not just about being customer-centric. I think a lot of companies love saying that, but it's much harder to actually do. I think one thing that we did really well at Gong is that when we defined what are the things that make us special, we looked at things that were already there in some ways, right? So I think a lot of the DNA that you build in a company starts almost from day one. So if having a very customer-centric type of company is important to you, it has to guide the founders and the early team from day one. It's not just something that you can say and hope that would happen later on. And this is where sometimes customer success teams feel like they're on an island where they're trying to bring the voice of the customer, they're trying to bring that to the rest of the company, and it's not really working. I think the key is to actually make sure that you're making decisions that show your commitment to it. So if you sold, I'll just give you a few examples. If you've sold a product to a customer and you realize that this is not a good fit, they're not going to be successful, it should be a very easy decision to say, this is not a good fit for this customer. We cannot make them successful. Then it should be a very easy decision to have a conversation with the customer and either find something else that they can do with the product. And if they can't do it, then just let them go. And I see a lot of companies struggle with that. It's very easy to say, but when the rubber hits the road and you need to make a decision, those decisions are not being made. And when that breaks, the rest of the company gets the message and says like, okay, we're saying that, but we're not actually doing that. That's just one example, but you want to make sure the customers have a great experience. It starts with the first impression that they get on the website. It starts with the first conversation they may have with an SDR, the level of service they get from your support team, whether your sales team is actually interested in making them successful and going deeper and understanding their business. By the time the customers get to customer success, they already formed an opinion about your company. And if their interaction and experience so far has not been good, it's really difficult to change that. This is your brand. So my advice to early stage company is make sure that you lay this foundation very early on. Make sure that you make decisions, the product level, go to market level, how you price, how you handle, churn, all of those discussions and all of those milestones along the way You have to show your team that you really mean it. And if you do that well, you still need to reinforce that. It's a much easier to scale and make sure that you have that consistent experience where leadership shows that they're committed to it. Other than that, you can put the posters on the wall and say what you believe in, but if people don't see that this is really what you do day in and day out, it's just not going to work.
Thank you, Eran. So thank you again for this insightful session, and it's really amazing to see the scale and growth that Gong has achieved in just a few years. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Customer success is all about being proactive and not reactive. And for that, you need data and a data-driven mindset. Clean and accurate data is a key part in building customer success processes and automation. Varda will share with us best practices for using data and automation to drive customer success, even in the early days of the company and with minimal resources. Varda is the Chief Customer Officer at Optimove. She comes with more than 14 years of experience helping customers improve their businesses by making the best use of their data. She manages a multidisciplinary team of CSMs, data analysts, solution engineers, and consultants. She was one of the pioneers of the customer success field in Israel and an active member of the local CS community. Varda, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Idit. Hi, I'm Varda Tirosh, Chief Customer Officer at Optimove. I manage a large group, which we call the Customer Organization, which includes customer success, delivery, this is the team responsible for technical onboarding and implementation, and business services. Optimove operates in the marketing technology space. We're a customer data platform, and we help companies grow their business through their existing clients by leveraging their data. It's a sophisticated platform which sits at the heart of the marketing operation. Our customer portfolio varies from mid-market all the way to large enterprise clients. And as such, our customer model is high touch. Onboarding can take between weeks to months, depend on the complexity, on the size of the clients, and other meaningful factors. The customer success team is 30 people, size of about 30 people, operates from Tel Aviv, London, and New York. Our team is measured on logo and dollar retention. This is not a commercial team. The commercial side of renewals and upsells is managed by the account management team that sits within the sales department. So people might ask, why do we have this kind of a business model? Why is it that commercials are led by a more commercial team? So very early stages, we thought that it makes sense to separate between commercial discussions and customer success. We thought back then that this is the way to go. And for two reasons, we went with this model. We didn't want our customers to constantly feel that someone is trying to sell them. We didn't want our customers to feel that the people that work with them on a day-to-day basis have an ulterior motive. And this is why this is basically the whole commercial side is managed by the account management team. They work very closely with our customer success team, and this is working pretty well for us. The other reason is because we thought that it's really hard to find people that are really good salespeople and good customer success managers at the same time. It's a complete different focus. And we think that, selling is a profession, and this is the focus of those people, and this is how it should be. Our customer success manager's profile is very diverse. We don't insist on specific background or a specific experience. We look for people that has the potential, talented people that are smart and motivated. We hire pretty young talent, people that are relatively junior and inexperienced, and we're growing them within Optimove. I started my way in Optimove as a marketing data analyst, and as such, I have a great passion for data, and it's always been the case. This is why I'm here today to talk about customer success and data. More specifically, how can data and automation can drive CS also in the early days. Mature customer success organizations, they either built or bought solutions that will base a lot of the CS practices on data. But what happened in the early days when there's low budget, low resources? How can you do some of it? And I'm going to touch upon this really soon. Just to give you a little bit understanding of how the maturity curve of data-driven customer success organization look like. Let's look at this. What are the different steps that an organization will go through in terms of being data-driven? So at the beginning, when you barely have data or you're not really doing anything with data, you're only reactive, okay? Then the next step is gaining insights from the data. Once you can see the data, you can understand different aspects of it, you gain data insights. Then you move to actions. How can I act upon the data and the insights that I was seeing? And the last phase is the outcome. When you take actions, you'll see those outcomes and it will impact your customer success and your company. So the first part is being only reactive before you collect the data. Now, let's really start to talk about how are we building the foundation of data. And the first, something that starts with every company, they get the first new clients, they need to start collecting the CRM data of those clients. CRM data can be anything from contract details, any information you have about the company, etc. And from my experience, people start with, pulling this information into Excel. Gradually, they start to move to different type of CRM systems, anywhere from HubSpot, Salesforce, or others. That's the basics of the basics, and it's basically just to make sure that you keep track on who your clients are, what are the different properties of their account, their contract, and that's the very basic. The next step is a very, very significant and valuable step in collecting data, and it should be very easy to do early days when you don't have much money or resources, and that's product analytics. Every company needs product analytics. If they have a product platform, they need to have product analytics, and this is an initiative that can be driven either by CS or the product team. And it can be very, very valuable, and I show you exactly what can you gain from having any platform like Pendo or WalkME that will do product analytics for you. Those platforms over time became smarter and smarter, and it's like killing a few birds with one stone. So first of all, it's a shared resource with product. So shared budget, shared resource for implementation, and both teams can benefit significantly from having this. Now, what can CS gain from having this kind of a platform? So the first thing is the product usage. They can tell very clearly logins, how many times the customer has entered the product, what pages did they visit, what features did they use or didn't use. A lot of very valuable information, initial information that can give me a good understanding of what my customers are doing. This will allow me to be proactive. This will allow me to give focused recommendations and not just work with guesses of what they're doing and not going. The second thing is client engagement. All those platforms like WalkME and Pendo, they have the guides. They have the ability to put like pop-ups on the screen and have guides that will help the users get to know the product better. So this is like a byproduct of using product analytics. So it's not just about getting the data and knowing what they're doing, but action upon it. Put guides out there, put pop-ups that will allow them to do better work with the platform, to know the different features and capabilities, and to us to communicate with our users within the platform. And the last thing that is something that recently was added by most of the product analytics companies' surveys, so NPS is the most common one of them, and you can start collect reviews by using this platform. So bringing in one platform, one product that can be leveraged by both CS and product, you can gain a lot of things that are the first step of becoming a customer success, a data-driven customer success team. Now that you have CRM data, product analytics, surveys, it's time to start visualizing and centralizing this data. And a lot of companies, no matter if they have a CS solution or any other CRM platform, they would need a BI tool for the benefit of the entire organization, right? So keep in mind that what I'm showing you right now will always be joint resource with other team members, with other teams in the company, and CS can gain from it as well. So either Looker, Power BI, Tableau, those are known products that are out there that you can bring in-house and very easily take the data that you already started accumulating and centralize and visualize for the benefit of everyone. For me, very early stages, I had a vision that my customer success team are going into some kind of a dashboard, and in a glance, they can understand the health of the customer. In a glance, they can see whatever the client is doing, how well they're doing, what they're using, what they're not using. And in like 2 minutes of reviewing this dashboard, they can come to meetings so much prepared with so much insights and relevant recommendations. All right? So that's the next phase in building your data foundation. Visualize it and centralize it. Then we can start taking this more and more steps forward. All right? It can be a gradual process. It doesn't all have to happen in one day, but this is where you can aspire to get to. Going backwards, talk about the maturity curve. So we started with being only reactive, and then we're moving to insights because we build the data foundation. We have some data points coming in, maybe not all of them, but some of them. And now we're able to gain insights from the data. The next phase is to move to action. How can we use this data and action upon it? Now, I want to talk about what this data can do to the CSM team and to the client. And I want to start by touching different points of how to empower your team to leverage data. It's not trivial. Not every team comes with data acumen. Not every CS team has the understanding of why and how to use data. And here are a couple of steps that you can take to help them do so. So first, you need to make the data accessible and centralized. So if it's hard work for them to get to data, then it's worthless. But if they can get to it in a very nice, appealing, convenient dashboard, that will be great, because then there are no excuses why not to use the data. So the first thing, make sure all the data is in one place and is accessible. The second thing, it's really, really important to create common definitions across the different teams, because I've seen many organizations that different KPIs have different meanings, different data have different meanings, and you don't want to be at that point. You want all the organization to have single source of truth, everyone speaking the same language, and therefore you must make definitions that everyone aware of and everyone are using the same definitions. The third thing, focus meeting around data, and I'm talking about internal meetings. If CS managers will come to one-on-one meetings with CSM when discussing clients, we'll open those dashboards, we'll look at data together. This will be a great way to train the team on using data, to train the team on how to look at data and what kind of conclusions can be drawn from looking at the data. So this would be like my number one recommendation, focus meetings around data. Number 4, build work routine around data. Right? It's really, really important. So what can you do to make the CS use data on a day-to-day basis? Are there any specific work routine that requires going to those dashboards, that requires going into this data? And you can use this again with number 2, with like going over it in meetings. And we'll talk about signals in a second, using signals that are based on data, and this is turning everything into becoming more actionable. Teach and evangelize data competency, invest in training. So as I mentioned, not everyone are coming with data acumen. Not all of them understand data and know how to look at it, interpret it. So it's important to give them the tools to do so. It's not a rocket science. It's simple data sets. It's not very easy to look at them and conclude from them, especially when it comes to product analytics and product usage. Shouldn't be too difficult for the team to use this data, but make sure that you train them on data. They will like it. They will feel empowered. And that leads me to the next slide to talk about how can we empower our clients with data. What can our clients benefit from us leveraging data? So, obviously data makes the dialogue very much more intelligent and informed. All right, so it's not a guess game. I see the data. I know exactly what the client is doing or not doing, what they're using, what they're not leveraging. This is a way to bring value to them. This is exactly what CS is here for, to increase the value from the product. And by visualizing, being access to the data of seeing what they're doing and not doing, this is the best way to bring value to the client. The recommendations become so much more relevant and focused based on the data, just like I mentioned. And the last point, it can bring added value to the client, from the product, different findings, and things that will allow the customers, bottom line, get more data, get more value from the product. Okay? So no more guess game, no more gut feeling, facts. Okay? All are based on the data that the CS has access to. Now I want to talk about automations, and this is the action part. How am I taking the data now that I have access to it and I have insights from it and turn it into actions? And one thing that you can do here is basically to build signals or early warning signs that are based on data. All right, so we did it like in stages. You start with 1 or 2 signals that are letting you know that, for example, the customer didn't log into the platform for the next 2 weeks, for the next month. How can you do that? You have access to this data. You took a product analytics platform. You have all the logins there. You have all the page visits, so you know when the customer is not logging into the platform. This is a very proactive step on your behalf to know that, have an automatic signal that lets you know that a customer didn't log into the platform, and act upon it. Send an email, try to bring them to a meeting, understand why is this happening. All right, so this is just one very basic, simple, but very valuable example of how you can action upon this data. Have an automatic signal go to the CSM letting them know that the user or the company did not log into the platform recently. This is very powerful. Make sure that you communicate with the customers in a way that is effective and is based on what you know and don't know, and you can really quickly take action upon things that you set as triggers. Now I want to talk about resources. How can you get the necessary resources to build this kind of a solution that includes dashboard, include automatic signals, etc.? And it might seem too much for a really new organization that has just like 2 CSMs. Who's going to do this work? So first I want to remind you a couple of things. It can be gradual. It doesn't have to be all in one day, all at once being created. So that's the first thing. Layer by layer. One data piece by data piece. So a gradual work will help you get to what you want. The second thing is that most of the things that I've showed you, most of the things that I mentioned, those are shared resources with other departments in the company. So this will allow you also to justify the cost and show that the value that you're going to gain from those, it's not value that is only for CS, but for other departments and for the company as a whole. So we mentioned the BI tools. This is something that the whole company will be utilizing for different departments, for different purposes, and above all for management. Product analytics, something that no product team will be able to grow and change the product and evolve the product without. So this is something that is a must, and both teams can greatly benefit from using this kind of platform. Support ticket. At some point, you're going to need this anyway. CS should have very clear visibility to those support tickets that are coming in. CRM platform, after a while, you can't just manage things in Excel. And the sales team, anyway, would need a CRM platform to manage all the prospects and then later on clients' information. What you do need is, in order to build those dashboards and to build those signals, you might need either R&D or BI analyst or CS ops. Different companies will manage it through different people, but it can be just a part-time student that you hire and will do those things for you, just like we did, and eventually it all evolves to customer success ops. Okay, but early days, you don't need much resources in order to get to everything that I showed you. And remember, work gradually. The outcomes will follow. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it, you benefit from it, and use data. It will make your CS just an amazing organization with all the benefits that we've discussed.
Thank you, Varda, for this important and practical presentation. This concludes Part A of our Customer Success Special Edition. Thank you again to all of our speakers, and thank you for joining us. I'm sure you took many notes, and you should also receive the link to the recording later today. I look forward to seeing you all next week for Part B. Until then, feel free to reach out to me or to anyone else from our Pitango team. Our emails are on the website. Thank you.